Okay, let's begin. Good morning everyone, I'm Sissi. Today I'm going to talk about GM food labeling. Before I start my presentation, let's take a look at these beautiful pictures. What is your first image when you see these pictures? Do you think they are colorful, they are delicious, or they may be good for our health? Actually, all of the food in the pictures share one common characteristic. They are all genetically modified food. We call them GM food. And GM food is what I would like to talk about in my presentation today. I have broken my presentation into 3 parts. In the first part, I will give you some background knowledge on GM food labeling, and why I chose this topic. And in the second part, I'll introduce some articles I reviewed for my research. And in the last part, I will further introduce the purpose of my research. Okay, let's turn to the first part. There are mainly 3 reasons that I choose GM food as my topic to conduct a research. Firstly, I think GM food is a popular topic in recent years, and it's a worldwide topic. And the second reason is with further development, GM food can help us to solve starvation, so it's of great importance. And the last reason is GM food can have some bad impact on human health. That is why we human beings concerned about GM food a lot. And considering about the GM food labeling, nowadays it is no unified labeling policy, and as we can imagine, unregulated labeling may harm consumers. So I think this topic is worth investigating. And my final research question is the choice between mandatory and voluntary GM labeling. Okay, let's move to the second part, literature review. I reviewed 7 articles in total, and I really found some points. In the first article, Preferences and Willingness to Pay for GM Labeling Policies, the researchers aim to determine U.S. consumers' attitudes about different labeling policies and their willingness to pay about different labeling schemes. And they let us see how they conduct the research. They selected 334 participants from mainly 3 big cities in U.S. And the data were collected from face-to-face surveys in supermarkets. And before the surveys, the participants will receive pre-training about GM food. And the data analysis was by a very sophisticated mathematical model. And I think this article is useful for my research because the researchers indicated that the voluntary labeling is better than mandatory labeling in the United States in 2004. But there are also some limitations. For example, the consumer samples are relatively narrow, only from 3 cities in U.S. And also the face-to-face surveys could be affected by the interviewers' bias. And in addition, this survey method could also have possible self-selection problem by the participants. But overall, I think this article could form a basis of my research. And the second article is written by Lutz in 2005. The aim is to determine the consumer's welfare effects of introducing and labeling GM food. The method is different with the previous research. They selected 372 female participants from 3 locations in US and 2 locations in Europeans. And pre-training and survey were also conducted. But one thing very interesting, that after the participants finish their surveys, they will have a very interesting experimental auction. The auction is about each participant was given a piece of chocolate chip cookies, which is 9 GM, and they were asked to add some money to exchange the 9 GM cookie to a GM one. And the problem is how much would the participant like to pay for the exchange. And after analyzing the data, the researchers indicated that the mandatory labeling is beneficial for European consumers, while the voluntary labeling is more suitable for US markets. However, the only female participants are involved could be a limitation of this article, of this research. To conclude, I think this article can also form a basis of my research. And the third article is about a case study for voluntary GM labeling in South Africa. And the aim is to detect the GM content in non-GM food and test the validity of GM labels in a voluntary labeling environment. And the researchers suggested that the voluntary labeling fails to protect the consumers in South Africa. There are also limitations such as smaller sample size and limited area. These articles, I think, may not suitable for me to put it in for base of my research article, but it could be a useful supplementary information. And there are also some other articles I reviewed. I found some points that could be the useful supplementary information, but I will not go into detail about it. And now I have finished my second part, and let's go to the last part about the purpose of my research. What I really want to investigate is the interactive relationship between the consumers from different countries and the different labeling policies and mandatory labeling and voluntary labeling. In other words, I would like to focus on consumers' different attitudes toward different labeling policies and how one specific labeling scheme could affect the consumer's attitudes. And this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. Here is the reference list, and please feel free to ask me questions.